So we've got this planter bench in my backyard that we actually inherited when we bought the house. And for a few years, it was great. There were some beautiful flowering plants were growing up the wall and it looked beautiful. But then one of them died and the planters kind of got overrun by weeds and it was just a mess. And I finally cleared it all out. And I have been thinking if I wanted to repaint this, kind of refinish this and give it new life, or maybe I just want to make a new one. So we are going to be building a set of planters with a bench. And I want to give a shout out to my friends at Mendocino Redwood for sponsoring this project. If you've been around this channel, you've seen me build a bunch of outdoor projects using redwood. I absolutely love the hue, the durability, and the fact that it is friendly and sustainable. But before we get started, if you are new here, I am Anika and I am here to demystify DIY and inspire and empower you to build all of the things. I have a whole bunch of tutorials, projects, and courses that will help you along the journey. So definitely take a look at the description below to grab those free resources as well as check out the courses. Now, let's get started. As always, I have the detailed plans with the cut list, the step-by-step instructions, and the schematics linked in the description below. We've got 12 boards per planter, so we have 24 boards to cut, all at the same length. So I set up a stop block on my miter saw and made all of the cuts. Plus, I cut down some 2x2s for the legs and some 2x4s for the bench. And that was followed by a lot of sanding of a lot of boards. I just put some tunes on and got it all done. Okay, so I have two sets of boards, one for each planter. Now, the way I want to build this planter is slightly different from the way, not slightly actually, very different from the way you see planters being built, because fence picket planters are very, very common. And the way normally people do this is they will rip this board and then wrap this around the ends. So they are attached and then this is wrapped around, right? So you have two pieces that are like this and then you attach the slats to that, which is fine. But number one, I am going for a different look. So I don't want that wrapped around corner look. And second, I really want to make sure that this is built without the need of using a table saw. So I am going to be using pocket holes to put it together. I know a lot of pocket holes, but it's going to be nice and strong and it's going to be easy to put together. And it's going to have a slightly different look from all of those planters you see out there. Now for the pocket holes, normally you want to set your jig and your drill bit collar at the thickness of the board, right? Now this board is 5/8 of an inch thick. My jig, this is the Craig 720, it does have a setting for 5/8 inch and this automatically adjusts to the thickness. So I can make pocket holes in this pocket hole jig. But I know it is possible that you don't have the Craig 720, you might have a different pocket hole jig like the 520 or the 320 where you can't really change the thickness that you are setting on your jig. So you only have a 3/4 inch setting on there. So I did a bunch of experimentation and you can set up your jig at 3/4 inch thick. And your drill bit collar, you want to set it slightly above the 3/4 inch setting. So it's just slightly shallower in terms of the hole that it's going to make. And then we are going to use 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws to attach to the 2x2. So yes, I put on some tunes once more and got to work making all of those pocket holes. If you are new to pocket holes or you want to learn more and get more confident using them, I do have a pocket hole reference guide that you might want to take a look at. That is linked in the description below. Now that the pocket holes are done, it is time to put it all together. So I started with the 3 boards that are going to form one side of the planter. I did kind of make sure that I was happy with what the final green looked like on the outside. And then I used outdoor wood glue and attached it to the 2x2 using 1.25" pocket hole screws. I highly recommend a right angle clamp to make sure everything stays aligned. And then I just repeated that for the rest of the 2 boards as well. Now it's time to attach this to the other leg so that we can make one full panel for one side. I made sure everything was as aligned as possible and attached it with the pocket hole screws. And that is one side of the planter. Of course, I built a second identical side. Now it's time to attach the other 2 sides to one of the panels to create our entire planter. Now this one can be a little tricky because the pocket holes are on the inside and I cannot use my right angle clamp. So I used a regular clamp, tried my best to make it as aligned as possible. Now, one of the things that you want to always remember as you're making the pocket holes is to never make the pocket holes at the same location. So I was moving the boards around as I was making pocket holes. This makes sure that when you are attaching them, the pocket hole screws do not hit the pocket hole screws that are already inside the board, or you will have a little bit of a traffic jam. But just making sure you move the pocket holes around a little bit as you're making them solves the problem. And I did not hit a single traffic jam while attaching these boards. And those are the 3 sides of the planter. And now I'm just going to take this entire thing, turn it over, and attach it to the 4th side. Once again, I had to make sure all of the boards were well aligned as I was attaching them. And this involved a lot of clamps and a mallet to make sure that everything got into place where it was supposed to be. And that is the body of the planter. Now, I wanted to trim out the top of the planter using 1x2s, so I cut them at a 45-degree angle and attached them using wood glue and finish nails. Now, one last thing for the planter is the bottom supports. So I glued and nailed a 1x2 to 2 sides of the planter wall. For the bottom, you can fit 2 boards easily, and in fact, you could leave some space in the middle for the drainage. Or if you wanted a really tight fit for everything, you can rip a board on a table saw and fit that in, which is what I did. And that is planter number 1 and planter number 2. Of course, you can use them as is if you like. The bench is made from 2x4s, so I sanded them and then I applied some stain. I also stained the planters. I am using a redwood stain just to sort of enhance the look and color of the redwood. Now, I wanted a trellis on the back of my planters, so I cut down a pre-made trellis. Staining this trellis was definitely a really hard thing to do, and I was definitely questioning my choices as I was staining it. I had to get into all of the nooks and crannies and really make sure that every single part that was visible was stained. And then I applied a couple coats of spar urethane on everything to protect it from the elements. Once everything was dry and cured, I added some drainage holes, which you can skip if you are going with the space in between the slats. And then I added landscape fabric and stapled it to the sides. Now to attach the trellis. I placed the trellis inside the planter and made sure that it was centered. And I used the position to give me an idea of where to add the screws. I just started the screws in. They are not going all the way through. I measured about 4 inches of the trellis, which is what I wanted inside the planter. Then I held the trellis in place, and this was a little bit of a balancing act. But once I had it held and added 1 screw, making sure that the other side was aligned and adding the 2nd screw was a lot easier. And once the trellis is attached, I went ahead and added an extra screw on both sides. And now this trellis is not going anywhere. Now for the bench. I made sure that the 2x4s were aligned and equidistant. I started with the ends. I made sure they were completely aligned and attached a 2x2 to the ends using countersunk screws. These 2x2s are the ones that are going to keep the bench from moving around, and you can use these to attach the bench to the planters. Once the 2x2s were attached on both ends, I also added an extra support using a 2x4 in the middle of the bench. Now this is totally up to you. If you're making a longer bench, I highly recommend adding a couple other supports. And now it's time to set it all up. I already have some sprinkler lines coming in, so I kind of made sure that those lines go in through the back of the trellis. But the truth is, you could use these planters as is standalone as well. And then the bench fits right in there. I did not attach the bench to the planter just yet, but you can add a screw through the planter into the 2x2. And I filled it up with some soil and added in some plants. I can't wait for these whining plants to grow and fill up this trellis. That's it. It's a super simple, quick, easy project that you can knock out in just a weekend. In fact, you can build this in just one day. Then you have to wait for the stain and the urethane to dry. Remember, I do have the detailed plans linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.